Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Fernandez, and I am running for Group 18 Circuit Judge. This is not the first time that I've run for judicial office. I have run previously twice, back in 2006 and in 2010. I want to give you a little bit about myself first. I wasn't born here. I was born in Cuba. My family fled communist Cuba back in the late 60s. I came when I was 5 years old to the United States. And back in the late 60s, things and images that I was seeing on TV weren't very pleasant. But nonetheless, I grew up in New Jersey. I didn't grow up in Miami. We went through Freedom Towers and Liberty Towers, as they are often called, and then went up to New Jersey. Back in the 60s, you had to have a sponsor. My uncle, the Methodist pastor in New Jersey at the time, became our sponsor, and we lived in a very small town in New Jersey. Prior to that, kind of like Joe, I grew up, at least the first 5 years of my life, and you can ask my dad who's here, in a rural area in Camagüey, Cuba. And maybe not cow pastures, but there's certainly sugarcane fields, and there were plenty of cows as well. I went to the public school system in a little town in New Jersey where there was no bilingual education. There was sink or swim education. And my life has been marked with instances of what I consider to be perseverance. Because there are many instances in my life that I could have failed and gotten nowhere. But I decided to stay in it, and I stayed in it because for the right reason. For instance, in second grade, I stayed back. It wasn't because I wasn't intelligent. I just didn't understand the language. And second grade teacher pulled my mother in and said, you know, I can promote him, but he's not ready. And my mother told her, no, I want him to get it right, make sure he gets it right. Of course, as a 7-year-old, I probably didn't appreciate that because I was finally making friends. I got picked on a lot because I didn't look like many of the other schoolmates that I had. I didn't bring the same kind of snacks or lunches to the cafeteria as my other fellow students did. But I got beyond that. I'll tell you that I was fortunate enough in high school to meet my wife, who's present here also. She and I became boyfriend and girlfriend, and we stuck it out. I think we're only one of 2 couples that actually did that. So if you really want to know something about me, the person to ask would be my wife. She oftentimes will remind me, you know, where my head is getting a little bit too big for me. I was fortunate enough, when I was in high school, I was a student athlete, so I was pretty good at athletics, and that allowed me a lot of things. My dream was, in high school, to become an attorney, a trial attorney. I used to watch the shows involving Perry Mason, and I found it fascinating. And you have mentioned that to the young people these days, and they look at you like you have 3 eyes in your head. But nonetheless, my interest in law came from TV initially, and then, you know, along the lines, I read a little bit about the law, and I started to look at it as a possible career. I was primarily a B plus student in high school, and I was able to get an admission to Seton Hall University in New Jersey, located in a suburb of Newark called South Orange, and I was a commuter student. That means I had to drive an hour each way. And if you're on the Garden State Parkway, if anybody knows about that, it's not pleasant. It's like a parking lot, sometimes much later. My interest in Seton Hall, I found out that my public school education was very lacking in preparing me for college. Many of the people that I was in college with were far advanced than I was. And it wasn't, once again, that I didn't have the intelligence. I just had not had the exposure to it. They were much better prepared than I had to do a lot of remedial classes. Why am I telling you that? Because it's part of who I am. I wanted to graduate. When it came time to graduate, I did in 4 years from Seton Hall with a degree in political science. Since that was the degree of choice, if you wanted to go on to law school, that's what I decided to study. I thought that Seton Hall, who had a law school, was just going to automatically admit me, and I just thought, you know, I'd apply to one law school, I'd get in, and the rest would be history. Well, a little curve was thrown at me. They put me on a waiting list, and I didn't know what a waiting list was, other than it was, you're not admitted yet. I started panicking. I started applying around, and I received a conditional offer from Syracuse Law School in New York. And I decided to take my $1,000 worth of graduation money in my summer between graduating from college and my first semester of law school, while all my buddies were at the beach and enjoying themselves. I was in upstate New York doing their summer program because Syracuse told me, there's something about you, maybe you don't fit the traditional criteria, but there's something about your essay, there's something about your background that we want to take a look at. And if you can complete the summer program, you're going to be in. And I did. That was another moment in my life that I believe was a turning point, because I could have said no. I got $1,000 and what? Give up a summer of my life? No, I don't need that. But I did, and I'm glad I did, because I made an investment in my future, in our future. While many people were getting divorced between first year of law school and second year of law school, I was getting married. So I didn't want to lose that pretty blonde over there in the back corner. She meant the world to me. I will tell you there are other points in my life, that I speak about openly, especially when I go around the school districts here at all levels and speak to young kids when I'm mentoring to them. And that is that, I didn't have the best of backgrounds in terms of economically, but I made the most of it. I'm not afraid to tell them my first job was McDonald's. I'm not afraid to tell them I scrubbed toilets. I'm not afraid of that because there's dignity in work. I knew that that's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, but I knew that I had to use every point in my experience as a stepping stone to where I wanted to be. And so I tell people, especially kids, nothing wrong with fast food, working fast food. You may not even want to work there for the rest of life, but you may want to make yourself a management person through this. You may want to take all your opportunities. McDonald's helped me to understand a lot about public service, customer service, and how you make sure that things are right so people want to come back, people want to engage you, want your business, and all that. I did everything there, including flipping burgers, doing the cash register, all that. I also had paper out. But most of my work as I progressed in life was at my dad's shop. My dad has an upholstery shop. Even though he was an accountant by trade in Cuba, when he came here, he obviously could not afford to take time off to go relearn everything in school and get certified here in the United States. So, he turned to his hobby, which was furniture repair. It was a lot about business through my dad's small business. I think small business are the backbone of America. And so I learned a lot about not only how to, upholster furniture and strip furniture and stain it and antiquing and all these things. And one day I remember quite distinctly, my dad says, son, I had a very big interest in baseball. I thought I was going to be the next, bright star, in baseball. And he pulled me aside, he had a very honest but tough conversation with me, and he said, son, you're good, but you're not that good. And you need to have a plan B. And so it was at that time, in conjunction with the things that I was watching on TV and the interest that I was developing in the law, that I wanted to become a lawyer, my plan B. Still watch a lot of baseball. In fact, last night I was over in Tampa with my dad watching a baseball game. I love the game. And it speaks a lot about life. Nonetheless, moving on, I went to law school. I graduated. While I was there at Syracuse, there was a fantastic opportunity for me to engage in a joint degree program where I was going to be able to graduate in the same three-year period of time with not one but two degrees. My Juris Doctorate in law, and obviously the other one would be a master's in public administration. I was young and naive. I thought I was going to go into politics. The more I looked at politics and the more I looked at my wife and the more that I thought about what I wanted for my family, I didn't want politics. I chose the legal profession as my profession, and I'm choosing to aspire to the judicial bench because I think it's the most honest and the most noble of the three branches of government, the legal judicial branch. I believe that there's less politicking, there's less room for nonsense. I do believe in a no-nonsense approach. And that's kind of like who I am. The other part that I think defines me is my judicial philosophy. You don't often hear about candidates talking about their judicial philosophy or their platform. Well, I'm going to share both of them with you. My judicial philosophy is the same as that was talked about by John Roberts, Chief Supreme Court Justice, in his confirmation before the Congress. And that was, trial judges are judicial umpires. Their job is to make sure that the integrity of the process, that being the trial process, is maintained at all times. Their job is not to take sides. In other words, their job is not to pitch or bat for any side. Their job is to call balls and strikes, safe or out. That's their job. As you can tell, I love baseball. But I also love the opportunity of being a judge. As I mentioned before, I may have mentioned before, if you have one of these, or if you don't have, please pick one up. I don't want to sit here and brag or boast about my background. I think I've got a pretty varied background. My hope is that you'll agree on reading it. I've done an awful lot with my life, and I'm not the type of person who begins doing public service when they're running for office. I believe in public service. I believe in giving back to the community. And if you read my background, if you go to my website, you'll learn all about that. The other thing about my platform, and you don't normally hear people, especially judges, having platform, or judicial candidates, I should say. My platform is right on there, front and center. Justice, the Constitution, and the rule of law must always prevail. I, too, as Joe, don't believe in judicial activism. That's legislating from the bench. That's not our function. But I don't believe in judges being cowards either. What I mean by that, I was asked on it from Naples Daily News. You can watch my interviews, well, as Joe's and several other candidates, on their website. It's a half-hour interview, taped. And what I mean by that is that we can't have judges that are afraid to make decisions. Judges are leaders in the courtroom. They reflect our community. Their job is to make sure that the integrity of the trial process, of the legal process, is fair and impartial to all. I'm going to disagree with Joe on one point here today, and that is I don't believe in judges who scare people away. And if you look at my interview in the Naples Daily News, I reiterate that I don't believe in the Judge Judy types. That's real entertaining on TV, but it's not so entertaining when you're before that person in the courtroom. I don't believe that's the place for it. I believe people come to the courthouse because it's their public courthouse. They have a constitutional right to that. Whether it's because they are filing a lawsuit or being sued, whether they're being prosecuted or defending themselves, it matters not. It's their courtroom. And the judge should not be there to scare anybody away. He's to be a fair and a neutral person, allowing both sides to present their case at all times. And I think that one of the things that the judges have lost out on is an educational component. You see, we have a lot of course we have a lot of lawyers going to court, but we have these days, we have a lot of pro se individuals going to court. People who don't have legal training, people who don't have legal representation, people that are going there trying to get their sense of justice, or at least their fair day in court. I've seen too many of those, and I've learned a lot of this not only by being in the courtroom for 24 years. I've been here since 1988. After graduating from Syracuse, I took my first position with the State Attorney's Office. I was here in Fort Myers from 88 to 90. And then since 90, I've been in private practice and handled a wide variety of cases. Everything from criminal law to personal injury to family law, landlord-tenant, wills. I do a little bit of everything, but the great bulk of my work is still criminal law. And I just believe that you have to have the right mindset to take this position, this important position on the bench. As I tell people, it's where the most important lawsuits and the most serious criminal cases get heard. When I was out in 2010, and I ran against Frank Mangini for county judge, I did it by petition process. In fact, myself and Eric Feichthaler were the only two, I believe, in the history of Lee County to qualify by petition for a judicial position. That means I hit the road, I hit the street, I pounded the pavement, and asked people to please consider signing my petition so I can be on the ballot, because it costs roughly $5,600, $5,700 to be on the ballot. But I wanted it for two reasons. I could have dug in my pocket and paid that, but I wanted to know more about people and their feelings about the legal system, because I think every system can be improved, including the judicial system. And what I heard was people didn't like being talked down to. The few times that they were in court, whether they were there as a litigant, whether they were there as a witness, whether they were there as a party, they didn't like being talked down to. They didn't like waiting hours and hours for a 5-minute hearing. I think there are many improvements that we can make and can be made to the judicial system, to the legal process, and it just takes a few people that actually do. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we can make adjustments to make it more efficient. Perhaps that's where my master's degree in public administration might fit in well, to make things a little bit more efficient. I understand that you all have some questions for me. I'll be happy to answer those. And to the extent that I can, I think Joe hit it on the head. There are certain things that I can answer. It's not that I don't have an opinion. It's just certain things that I can't answer. Because, as he said, what I personally believe doesn't matter. It's what the law says. And my job, as my platform, is to maintain the Constitution, justice, and the rule of law. Yes, sir.
I'll try to ask you the same question about the Ten Commandments. You probably would say answer to it. Let me ask you a slightly different way. For 171 years, the exercise clause was given equal footing with the establishment clause in the First Amendment. And then in 1962, it was either Emerson or Engel versus Vitality. The exercise clause was trashed. Now, is that the precedent that you would use, judgment, or would you go back to that first 171 years and look at the precedent that happened there, the decisions?
Let me answer it this way. I can't answer that particular question because it's kind of the same question that was asked before, but I'll answer it this way. I think my role as a judge, or would be as a judge, to look at, number one, at the law as it's written. Okay? It has to start fundamentally with the law. That law must be compared to the Constitution, which is, and has always been, the highest authority in this country. And I would base that upon that. But I also would look at the legislative intent. It's very important for judges not only to look at the law as plainly written, but the legislative intent behind the law. And if the law does not measure up, and this is going back to where I was saying, you're not a judicial activist, but you also can't be a judicial coward. And that means that if the law doesn't comport with the Constitution, if it's in contradiction, it must be struck down. And so my feeling is that I will base my decision based upon, number one, the law, number two, the facts presented. Because sometimes you got great law going into a case, but your facts aren't that great. Or sometimes you got great facts going into the case, but your law isn't that good. So the judge's role is to look at everything, but it must start with the law and the legislative intent and the facts, and then decide from there.
The Constitution itself is kind of the basis of the law.
Absolutely. But sometimes it isn't. Because sometimes there are laws that are made that disregard the Constitution. Yes, sir.
What can you do to stop the legal shenanigans that prolong the justice or the actual execution of justice, as I talked about earlier, the gamesmanship that cause cases to go on and on for one party cannot last for the other?
I think it's about scheduling orders. Yes, case management is important, and it's helpful. We didn't used to have case management, where you actually have an outline of things that you need to get done and a deadline or a time frame in which to get it done. But I think scheduling orders are important, and I think deadlines are important. And the parties need to know that if they don't comply with certain deadlines, perhaps that evidence will not be allowed or considered. I think that when you impose or you put some penalties on things if it doesn't get done, somehow they get done. So I think it's important to have scheduling orders. I think it's important to be able to comply with the scheduling orders and enforce those scheduling orders. And then it's the party's fault if they don't. So I think it's important that the process is not only in place, being case managed, yes, we meet, but if we don't meet, but if we meet and we meet often, yet there's no teeth to when things have to be done, then it's almost as if the meeting is for nothing.
Well, you say that this morning, I say those at the table, I told you what I thought it was. We did meet. I was on the circuit 20 grievances meeting, and I was just leaving and you were coming on as chairman of that committee. My question to you is, what do you see as the most common problem that people find grievances with lawyers for?
It was the lack of communication, likewise. It was lack of communication, whether or not the attorney was keeping his client, informed of what was going on, or the attorney was making decisions without the input of his client that oftentimes was to the detriment of the client. So I think that the great majority of the complaints had to do with communication. Now there are others. and many others. But that one seemed to be the most important. You know, the lawyer is doing something and hasn't called me, or I call the lawyer, or the lawyer is taking action and hasn't conferred with me. The lawyer is settling my case or making an offer, and it's all about communication. And I think, let me go back, and I'm glad you raised that. My experience on the grievance committee was invaluable because it showed me some of the things that the lawyers were doing. And obviously, there has to be a process in order for us to be viewed, with transparency and integrity. There has to be a process where lawyers get reined in and sanctioned if necessary for not doing the right thing. I mean, we're a great profession, but we've got our bad apples too. I don't want to leave you with the wrong impression. Yes. Now I'm getting nervous. My wife is asking me a question, so I'm getting real nervous now.
Somebody had asked before about how you can become a judge, and I wanted you to share with us about your experience.
Sure. As Joe mentioned, there's two ways you can become a judge. One is by election, as we're going through right now, and the other is through appointment process. The appointment process is very complex. You have approximately 9 or 10 people that sit on the Judicial Nominating Committee. Those are primarily appointed by the governor and in conjunction with the bar. And these are people that are from all areas of our 20 judicial circuit. So you'll have different compositions. Sometimes you'll have a composition of that Judicial Nominating Committee, or as I call JNC, that's more Lee County weighted, or Collier County, or it's very well dispersed throughout the 20th Circuit. I have been blessed. I've been privileged enough to, on 5 separate occasions, been nominated for a position of judge. 3 times for county, the last time being last summer, and Andy Sweat stole my job again. And the other 2 was for circuit, so I've been nominated 5 times. I don't necessarily like talking about that, because some people then say, well, if you've been nominated 5 times, how come you haven't been appointed? And I will tell you, I'm not a political person. And what I mean by that is, I understand the political process. I've got a degree in the political process. I've studied it. I haven't been able to really appreciate the activism of some of the people involved in politics. There's some of the things that goes on that just turns me off. But I will tell you that even though I've considered my lack of political connection, so to speak, to be my biggest weakness, I also believe it to be my greatest strength, because I believe that I view things more independently than others. And so, thank you for asking. But I have been nominated 5 times, and they've been over the course of the last 10 years. So, I've had different committees pass judgment on me and my qualifications. Sometimes I made it, and sometimes I haven't. I don't want to leave you with the impression that I only applied 5 times and I got in all 5 times. No, I haven't. There are times that I got in and I didn't get nominated. But the composition of that Judicial Nominating Commission does vary over time. Yes?
You mentioned about the delays in the court where, as an example, you spend all day there and you get your 2 or 3 minutes and you're out of there. How much leeway does the judge have in speeding up the process? As an example, in the court several times, and it seems that the people that are represented by an attorney get cases first. Right? That was just a point.
That's a great observation, and I'm not going to dispute that. But I will tell you that I've spent many hours in court waiting for my 5-minute hearing too, because it was full of attorneys. I think the judge has tremendous leeway. If the judge wants to schedule something on his calendar at X time, he can. If he wants to schedule it at B time, he can. He can direct a lot of that. Obviously, he has to work in conjunction with the clerk's office, because the judge isn't the only person in the courtroom. He has court clerks there. He has bailiffs there. He has court personnel there, all of which work in conjunction with the judge. But he certainly, or she certainly, depending upon who you're talking about, has a tremendous amount of leeway to get things scheduled. And you don't have to schedule everything at 8 o'clock. I really don't appreciate when we've got 40 cases scheduled at 8 o'clock in the morning. That absolutely serves no purpose. You can schedule 10 matters from 8 to 8:30, 10 matters from 8:30 to 9. You can stagger it. You can find creative ways to not have so many people in the courthouse. And guess what? The court security over there, they actually, I think, will appreciate it. They don't like 100 people coming in between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning, or 1,000 people coming in. They don't. It's more on them. It's more on everybody. I think there's creative ways you can go about doing that. I hope that answers it.
I know that does that as doctors.
Say again? I'm sorry? I got to be careful. My uncle's a doctor, so I don't want to say anything in that regard. So, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
And you may not be able to speak to this. Every now and then you hear your comments about the appointment process and you think about it. You hear sort of chatter about how some judges who are on the verge of retiring prefer to retire in midterm so the person can be selected through the nominating and appointment process rather than be chosen through the election process.
Yes.
Is that justified? Is that explained?
I think there's two theories, two schools of thought on judges, and that is one, many people believe that it should only be by appointment. In other words, that we get a better product if it goes by way of appointment. And I think you have the other school of thought that says it's more democratic to elect your judges, particularly when they get the least amount of attention and they're the longest term. It's not a 2-year term. It's not a 4-year term. It's a 6-year term. My opinion on it is that there are judges that believe that way, and it's every bit their right to retire midstream if that's what they want. If they believe that it would be better for, let's say, the governor to appoint a particular person versus allowing it to be filled by election, that's their right. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's more democratic that we elect them because it allows us to go out in the community. See, when you get appointed, you don't really have to interact with that many people. You just got to interact with the right people. Really, when I've gone up there to Tallahassee, I've gone up there with a very good package to present. And oftentimes that package gets moved from here just over here, and they want to know about other things. So that's okay. I'm okay with it. You know, I feel good about what I am and who I am and where I'm going. And as Joe indicated in his situation, if this doesn't work out, you know, I've got a good paying job to stay with. The only other thing that I think is sometimes you're looking for something to distinguish ourselves. I know Joe's been in Florida at least since 2000. If I read the Florida bar, I've been here since '88. I know that Joe's run twice for public office, as I have, but non-judicial. I think County Commissioner Joe. And I've only run for judicial office. I have no interest in other positions. This is the only thing that I've wanted to do, and God has placed it on my heart to seek it out, to put my talents to their highest and best use. And at the end of my life, I want to have, you know, the ability to look back and have no regrets. Thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak with you.
Thank you very much. I talked to him about this.